What's up, my people? We are back with the Jay Hendrick Show. I am Jay Hendrick, and I just have this first question to ask. What's the first question? The first question of the day is, dudes and dudettes, what is up with Trump? I just got this new article from over the break here, over the last 30 days. Actually, it's more than that. It goes all the way back. No, it's the 30 days. That's right. It's from Reuters. It's the Reuters rolling poll. I know everybody in the world is following this election, and there's a lot of stuff to talk about there. I am not a pundit. I don't even know what a pundit is. If I was a pundit, I don't think I would tell anybody. It doesn't sound something cool. It sounds something kind of weird. So I'm not a pundit, a political pundit. I actually find this fascinating because I think the rolling poll, this information we're about to talk about, and I'll link it. This is from Reuters. The information we're about to talk about shows a trend. See, I've told you before, my job as an IT guy, most of what I've done a lot of different things, but most of what I've done has to do with being an analyst of sorts. What you do is, especially whenever you're dealing with large amounts of data, you've got to make sure the data is normalized. I got to make sure the data is all the same so that you can count the widgets the same way, right? And then what you do is you look at large numbers. Large numbers can predict certain things or can give indicators of certain things, or you can see certain things. Stock markets do this. Everybody does this. It's what you call big data analytics. And, just like stock market folks or stockbrokers would say, the trend is your friend. The reason it's your friend is because it can tell you a paradigm, it can tell you a belief, it can tell you a common direction, it can show you a vector. There's a lot of reasons why the trend is your friend. Well, this latest poll shows some very interesting things in these trend lines. It shows that Donald Trump is now at 39.2%. I mean, let me just say this. Any dude who can pull off that haircut, we ought to just go ahead and make him president right now. Can you see that hair is amazing? It's like I think you should have two things on the ballot. One is for Donald Trump and one is for his hair. I don't know if it's actually truly connected. I really don't know what it is. In fact, my oldest son came up to me the other day, and he was showing me how they actually, some artist or somebody on the internet, there's a lot of cool people on the internet, I'm one of them, actually took the mascots from all the NFL football teams and then put Donald Trump's hair right on top. Yes, see, there's something interesting about this phenomenon. We talked about it before. The summer of Trump was last summer. Now he's making it into pop culture, right? We're not just seeing him in areas of political discourse and that kind of thing. We're seeing him in all sorts of areas. So what is up? Why is that happening? Are we seriously talking about Donald Trump, president? I actually think there's a couple of things going on here. I do think that there is. I do think there is something to Donald Trump's position. Donald Trump has taken the hardest line in illegal immigration. I think there's a lot of people in America that are very scared of that. I'm one of them. You probably don't know this, but I was actually born in another country. I am married to an American. I became an American through naturalization. So I know something about the process. And we had a specific way to do things. We had to go meet with people. We had to do certain things a certain way. And that is not what this is talking about. This is talking about people coming in illegally. There's a lot of bad things coming over the border. And I think Trump has really focused on that. I think that's been very good. I also think Trump has a very clear way of explaining his beliefs and his positions. And when other candidates on the Republican side are going and hiding their position within just lists and lists of policy, people are afraid of policy. It's a policy that's kind of strangling them right now. Obamacare is a policy. Taxation is a policy. All these policies, all this verbiage, and all this lawyer speak is scaring them, and I tend to agree. I kind of feel that way too, and I think a lot of people do. And I think there's a third thing that really has nothing to do. It's probably the most important thing. I think it's not really about Trump. And you need to look at the whole thing here. He is 27 points, 26 and a half points ahead of his closest competition, which is Ted Cruz. But if you look at all the candidates, starting from the inside all the way out, the lowest candidate actually is Jeb Bush. Actually, Jeb Bush is not even showing up on the, oh yes he is. He's showing up at 17.2. So the lowest candidate in the rolling poll for president has the most, he seems the most like an establishment politician. He seems the most like someone, he's inbred inside the Republican Party. I mean, when you think of Bush, there's been two other presidents that were both Republican that were named Bush. I mean, it's very hard to separate the Bush name from politics, especially Republican politics. So Americans, I don't really think they care as much about Republican or Democrat or that kind of thing. I think what this trend shows is they feel a lack of representation. I think you can see this radiating out. There's an inverse relationship here. People that seem the most entrenched in the system have the least amount of poll support. And those that have no earmarks, no fingerprints, no connected tissue to anything going on in Washington, they radiate out with the highest poll. I can say this too about Ted Cruz. Ben Carson, I really don't know what's going on there. But Ted Cruz, if there's any politician that has been the most anti-establishment, that is known for that is the most against the political system, and the most Tea Party candidate, right, following along with the grassroots campaign, the libertarian movement to reduce the size of government, all those kind of things. He's in second place, but it's very interesting that he's in a distant second. That's amazing to me. And I think one of the reasons why that is true is because he's still a politician, and Donald Trump is not. I mean, there's nothing politician-like about him, really, truly. He has a keen business sense. He is brash. Oh man, is he a brash. In fact, I was going and talking to some family members the other day, some older family members, older than me, and they were talking about how he just offends their Southern sensibilities. I mean, I know that's what it is. I just know that's what it is. And so, but yet still people are going to vote for him. I think he shows some real true leadership. But before all that, I'm not necessarily a fan. I actually like other people in the race. I just think it's fascinating, this trend that says there's this great distance between Washington and all that kind of thing. And I think people, more than anything, people feel like they're not being represented in their own government. And what's very interesting, again, maybe if pundits truly understood, and again, I don't know what a pundit is, but if they truly understood what was going on here, they would maybe study the origins of America, the United States of America. See, there was a saying many years ago that actually birthed this nation, and it was called taxation without representation. Good King George over in England had these colonies over here in what would become in North America. And he would collect taxes from folks. That's just what you did. You paid tribute to the king because you were in the Commonwealth. But the people here, there was a growing amount as thoughts of democracy was rising in the world at that time. The thought of building a republic, the thought of actually self-governance was growing through a lot of different things. As that started happening, people who had influence here in the United States, Ben Franklin being one of them, was in the United States, it was the colonies before it became the United States, started looking around and saying, this guy's across the ocean and he's demanding taxes from us, but we have no say in what happens. We have no say. We left England because we didn't have the freedom of speech we thought we should. We left England because we couldn't live and be self-determining. And here we are, it's following us because we're becoming prosperous. And as you know, eventually what happened, things like the Boston Tea Party, things where that saying no taxation without representation became evident, and we had the American Revolution, and here we are in the United States of America, the most powerful nation in the world still. And quite frankly, it's been the most powerful nation the world has ever known. That's who we are. And it came from those moments. Well, what's interesting now is there's a common belief, that the government is now becoming oppressive, and it's now starting to govern against its people, right? So, and I have to tell you, there's a lot of things going on that just don't make sense. I mean, they just don't. But anyway, getting back, you guys have heard about the Tea Party, and that's been demonized in some ways. But I can tell that story by talking very easily about Ben Franklin and some other things going on. See, there's a flag that really represents, I think, the way people felt back then, and in some ways are feeling now, that kind of illustrates this trend we've been talking about. Well, the flag is actually a snake. Have you seen it? You may have seen it in the news lately. It's called the Don't Tread on Me flag. There's a snake that's coiled, and it says, "Don't tread on me." See, that flag is known as the Gadsden flag. The Gadsden flag, there was a General Gadsden that actually used this to rally the troops. And the idea is there's this coiled snake. And it doesn't, in the Revolution, people really felt like they were being oppressed. And the snake, believe it or not, I don't like snakes personally, became a symbol for a group of people that felt like they had to strike back defensively. Not necessarily offensively, but defensively. They were being oppressed, and that was the point of the snake. In fact, Ben Franklin would write about the snake that it was exactly that. It doesn't strike first, but it doesn't give up when it does get into the fight. And that was a call to arms. In fact, Ben Franklin also drew a cartoon with separate parts of a snake being the different colonies and how they should fight back and not be oppressed. No taxation without representation. All of these things, I think this trend also shows that there's a great deal of fear. A great deal of fear in our country and in our culture. There's a lot of people that don't like what's going on. They don't like our culture being rewritten in a revisionist way. They don't like rules that are against family values and conservative beliefs, and they don't like the oppression of the freedom of speech. They don't like political correctness running amok, and they feel like they can't be themselves anymore. I hear this all the time. I'm worried about my children and my grandchildren. I'm worried about the world they're going to grow up in, and all those kind of things. And there's really kind of I think this trend also shows that there might be a little bit of a desperation and a little bit of a feeling like, what are we going to do? Has God kind of abandoned us? So that's, again, how should a Christian respond when they feel that way? When they feel like things are going? I mean, a lot of people, I have, for the first time in my life, for 45 years, I hear a lot of people talking about, they don't know where this is all heading. And I want to remind you of a story in the Bible. I think that's where we go whenever we feel discouraged, whenever we feel like something has happened to us and we can't control the outcome, and we feel alone. There's a story of a prophet named Elijah. Elijah was a real person. He actually lived. He was a prophet against some wicked kings, against a wicked king and against basically the wicked king's wife. Have you ever heard the term where somebody calls a wicked lady Jezebel? Well, Jezebel was the queen at the time who hated Elijah, And Elijah what a prophet would do at that time in the ancient Israel, the prophets were the voice of God. This is before Jesus had come. And so there wasn't the Bible per se, there was the book of the law, but a prophet would come in and give the word of God to the leadership and to the people and say, this is what's going on. This is what God thinks about what you're doing. And God rose them up during times of wickedness, when there were wicked kings. And so Elijah had spoken many things against Jezebel. And in fact, Elijah had many victories, or actually God had many victories that Elijah prophesied about. Well, Elijah, at this point, was sick of it. He had run out into the wilderness. And he gets there and he finally, it's almost like he gives up. And he speaks against Israel. He says, there's just wickedness. Lord, I'm done, right? Paul writes about this incident in Romans chapter 11. Please open your Bibles if you have one near you. I ask then, this is what Paul says, has God rejected his people? So Paul is talking about how Christ came and the law, there's certain things with the law and all that kind of stuff. And then he talks about the place of Jewish folks or Israel in New Christianity. He's writing this after Jesus came, but he's writing about this incident. And he's talking about the children of Israel. I ask then, has God rejected his people? By no means, for I myself am an Israelite, a descendant of Abraham, a member of the tribe of Benjamin. God has not rejected his people, whom he foreknew. Do you not know what Scripture says of Elijah? Now here's the story we're talking about. How he appeals to God against Israel. That's what Elijah did. He said, Israel's done. Just go ahead and get rid of them. And Lord, they have killed your prophets. They have demolished your altars. And I alone am left. And they seek my life. Guys, everybody feels that way. As a Christian, I feel that way all the time. Is there anybody else? Am I the only person trying to raise my family under Christian conviction? Am I the only person that's trying to do? I mean, I'm not a perfect person by any means. I screw up all the time, but I just feel alone. And I think people listen to my voice, and I think everybody has to feel that way. Well, this is how God responds to Elijah. And this is what Paul says. But what is God's reply to him? I've kept for myself 7,000 men who have not bowed the knee to Baal. So too at the present time there is a remnant chosen by grace. But if it is by grace, it is no longer on the basis of works. Otherwise, grace would no longer be grace. So in other words, what God actually tells Elijah, and this is what Paul is citing in this passage, is there's 7,000 other people that I've kept by grace for my purpose. There's a remnant. I think there's hope in this trend, guys. I think there's still a remnant now. God is still working out his purpose in history. He's doing it. He did it then, and he's doing it now. There is hope. There's always hope. There's hope because there's a remnant by God's grace.